The world of RuneScape is already pretty massive. Walking from one side of the map all the way to the other would take way more time than most of us would like to put in. Although, at the same time, it seems too small to host many of the adventures you embark on while inside it. How did gods fight full-on wars in a part of Gielinor that takes maybe just a few minutes to cross? Well, to answer that, we look to something called Scale Theory. In this video, we take a look at Scale Theory and what it means for the land of Gielinor. So, let's get into it. So, first off, you're probably asking, what is Scale Theory anyway? Well, to briefly summarize, it's basically that the world of RuneScape seen in the game is actually just a scaled down version of the lore version of RuneScape. Now, this still may be a bit confusing, so I'll go more in depth in a minute. Before we go any further in this video, I'll be referring to the in-game version of Gielinor as the world you actually play in inside the game, and the fictional world of Gielinor as the world seen in the lore. Anyway, have you ever noticed how there's pretty much no empty areas in RuneScape? You can't go more than 30 tiles without seeing a building or another NPC. This is nothing like the real world where forests exist that stretch for miles and deserts that nobody has ever even tried to live in before. Another thing worth noting is the size of cities in RuneScape. For this example, we'll use Varrock. Varrock in-game takes maybe 2 to 3 minutes to walk through. This doesn't make sense when it's supposedly a massive city with hundreds upon thousands of people living in it. For example, in the lore, Varrock has supposedly the largest military in the world, yet they're nowhere to be found. It also produces a huge amount of crops, yet it has almost no fields nearby. And lastly, it's the most scholarly capital in Gielinor when all it has is a small library located in the castle. This is where Scale Theory comes into play. What if the Gielinor we see in-game isn't actually the full thing? What if this version of Gielinor is just a shrunk down, compressed version of the fictional world seen in the lore? Basically, the world of Gielinor that we see is just a version where all the details not necessary for gameplay are removed. This may be a bit hard to believe, but quite a few examples are seen in-game as well as in the books. First, for the in-game examples, is the Lumbridge to Alcarid Gate. Just out of nowhere, the forests of Lumbridge transition into a vast desert. This obviously would make no sense in real life, but because nobody wants to spend a half-hour walking to get to this gate, the transition area was shrunk down quite a bit. In the fictional world of Gielinor, I imagine it would take quite a few hours, if not days, to get from Lumbridge to Alcarid. If you're not sold on the idea of the world being scaled yet, let's take a look at temple trekking. In this minigame, you visit parts of the Mortmire swamp that you would normally never be able to get to. This would mean that massive chunks of the swamp in the fictional world have been removed from the game world. Although so far I've only given examples of places being scaled down, there are also places that seem to be of accurate size to the fictional world of Gielinor. Places like this are seen during the Underground Pass quest. You make your way through a tunnel network and a massive cave that seems way too large for the game. This could mean that the area has been properly scaled to the world of Gielinor as seen in the lore. If all of this evidence hasn't convinced you yet, Scale Theory is pretty apparent in the books. Although what is and isn't canon in these is pretty confusing. The books mention Falador being a massive city with 10,000 inhabitants and containing a pretty big district of rundown houses known as the Dens, which you see absolutely nowhere in the game. Other than this, I have one more thing that may prove Scale Theory's existence. Time. A prime example of this is the farming skill. It can take as little as a few seconds for some crops to grow. Another example is in the gathering skills such as fishing and woodcutting. In fishing, you can collect hundreds, maybe even thousands of fish in under an hour. The same goes for logs within woodcutting. Also, in both skills, although you collect all these resources, it seems to have no effect on the planet's ecosystem. The fish you collect aren't going extinct, and neither are the trees. All of this combined gives Scale Theory a pretty good chance of being real. Although nothing is real unless Jagex says so, I personally believe this theory pretty much got it right. Other than all of that, there are quite a few other things relating to Scale Theory that I won't mention as they're full-on confusing and sometimes a bit of a stretch. For example, one of those things being that you're controlling a real citizen of Gielinor and that the game is just an interplane device to display the real world of Gielinor to the player. If you have no clue what any of that means, don't worry, that's why I left it out. Many players have also tried to theorize the actual full size of Gielinor, but the only ones who can truly tell us that are Jagex. There are far too many factors for me to make an accurate guess, although this chart of some of the in-game creatures may be a good place to start. Thanks everyone for watching. This video wouldn't have been possible without the RuneScape Wiki, where this entire theory is explained. If you want to learn more about this topic, I suggest checking it out in the description below, as it covers a few things that I chose not to. Anyway, drop a like and maybe watch another one of my videos, and I'll see you in the next one.